Hey friends, it's Jill here with the Hometown Homestead, and today's video I'm on like take 17. The words are hard to come, and the reason is that this is one that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it is just hard for me to get it right. So I want to make sure to do this a good service and to let you all know what you can do with a little intention over the next year if you're interested in pursuing ways of sustainably feeding your family. It was about a year ago at this time that I decided that we had to do something different. That if the supply chain were to go down, that my family wasn't prepared. When COVID hit, we went to Sam's and we got, like a case of canned corn and a case of green beans and a case of canned mushrooms and a few other basics. And we had a freezer full of meat. But as far as like being prepared on a level of sustainability that would really serve my family, we weren't there. And as things continued to progress over the next couple years, it was really laid upon my heart last year around this time in the fall that I wasn't prepared, and that it was my job as a mom to be able to provide for these children and for my family, and that I didn't possess the skills that were necessary to do it, and I needed to take the bull by the horns and learn. So the first thing in jumping off of the matrix for me was to unplug. And by unplugging, I mean I cut the cord on all subscription TV services and went to YouTube and started searching out skills that I needed to hone in on. And the first thing that I went to was gardening. And I started watching Kevin on Epic Gardening, so shout out to Kevin. And started to realize that there was a lot of growing that could be done in containers and small spaces, and that you could really get a lot of great production and variety just in even your own front yard. And from there, it really started to open doors for me. And I started watching market growers and realized the bulk of produce that you could grow in a small space. And it started to really kind of wake me up to the fact that I had, even living in town, I had space, like these guys are living inside apartments in New York City and LA, and they're accomplishing these huge hauls of food. And even if they can grow on a balcony in a green stock, that I could definitely grow in my yard back here. Now, here's a secret for you. Before this year, I had killed almost every plant I had ever been given or purchased. And I was one of those people who would get mums just for the fall because they would be dead instantly, and my tomatoes would only give me a few before they would die, because watering and caring for plants was not on my list of things to do. So you can imagine my husband's skepticism when I started talking about putting in a garden. Now, that said, he really does, even if not always fast or willingly, go along with my plans. So when I started making plans to put in a garden and seed packets started arriving, he understood that this was going to happen and I was going to give it a go. And I think more than anything, he was willing to give me a shot to sink or swim. And lucky for us, I did swim. So back to our first steps. So we went ahead in the spring and we put in 8 no-dig garden beds, and we purchased soil and put in the whole thing. And the garden beds were awesome, successful, lots of food, lots of fun. The kids really enjoyed it, and we started planning and thinking about what we were going to be putting in next year's garden. Now, one of the tips that I actually saw when I was looking around for information on getting started in gardening was that it's really important not to put too much variety or overdo the size of your initial first year garden. You're learning, and you got to know what's going to work right for you. There's climate things to consider and all those kind of things. So it was actually Jill Winger over at Prairie Homestead who said to focus on 3 main crops. And I think that was really, really good advice. So for me, we did cucumbers, tomatoes, of course, and peppers, and they all turned out really good. We also added in a few other things like potatoes, onions, lettuce, and so on. So now we're going to see if we can trek back over to my actual side of the fence and see if I can take you inside to show you a little bit about what I've done in the pantry and what I was able to put away with just the small garden space that we have. Just as a side note, there actually still is a little bit of life out here in the garden. This is our garlic patch, and I cannot wait to get this stuff on the shelf in the spring. Okay, so recently I have been in the process of turning my office into a full-on working pantry. And this came along as well with the idea that I needed to bulk up the things that I had in addition to using just what we have available from the garden. So all during the spring, I kept feeling led to bulk up my pantry. And so I set out to do just that. And for some people, this is like going on a huge Sam's Haul or Azure Standard or Costco or whatever and bringing in a whole bunch of food at one time. And for others, that just isn't doable in the budget. And wherever you are, you got to do what works right for you. But even still, the food prices that you're going to find today are probably going to be better than those that you find in 6 months. So if you have money that you can just go and grab a whole bunch of food, you're going to be better off in the long run than waiting till just 6 months down the road even to buy a few more things at a time. If finances do not allow one bulk run to grab what you need, buy 3 extra canned goods a week or even 5. If you find a sale on canned goods or dried beans or dried rice, grab them. Those kinds of staples can go a really long way into bulking up a pantry and adding a lot to your meals. One thing that I was surprised about is even just how much money I could save by buying my own dried black beans and canning them myself. And I know a lot of you don't have canners or might not be into canning, especially pressure canning, which is what you have to do with beans. But the fact is, you can actually make up beans in advance and freeze them in Ziploc bags flat in trays so they quickly thaw, and put them in your freezer and pull them out and experience that same savings and speed of time that comes along with the cans without investing in the process or learning the process of pressure canning at all. So these things can be applied even if you have different preservation methods available to you or you haven't been able to invest in some of those higher end options. Now, my pantry is still a work in process and will always be a work in process because this isn't stuff that we're just setting on the shelf and not using. This is actually stuff that we're using on a constant basis. And I have been waiting to show you guys what I've been doing in here and how much I brought in from my garden because I kept thinking I wanted to get the last amount of tomatoes into jars before I did it. And then I realized, you know what? I like some of my tomatoes whole in the freezer so I can pull them out whenever I want to make an easy tomato soup that way as well. And the fact is, the longer I delay on the tomatoes, the more gets eaten off my shelf back here. And let me tell you, some of those things are going fast. This whole shelf right above me, right in here, is pickles or was from side to side. And you can see that gap's growing in the middle. And I even have some cowboy candy in there now because my kiddos have eaten their weight in pickles since I started putting them on the shelf back in the summer. It's really quite amazing how fast they'll go through them. I'm really shocked. So from my first year's garden, what was I able to pull in? Let's go take a look. One of my first goals was a year's worth of salsa, and this is what I have left of that. Now, of course, I don't have to make a full year because we do eat fresh, and this row was actually all the way over into here in the beginning, so we've eaten down about 3 or 4 rows, but I do feel like we probably have enough to make it through until 4th of July when we'll have fresh tomatoes again and be able to start eating tomatoes from fresh salsa. So I think we did reach that goal. This is corn from my brother's farm, so I didn't actually have to grow this, which makes it even sweeter. And for my corn preservation, this was actually the first thing that I pressure canned, and I just wanted to try it out. At the time, which is another great tip, I borrowed a canner from a friend to see if it was something that I was really going to be able to do and feel confident with before I went ahead and invested in one of my own, and I definitely recommend that. Now back to the corn. We actually have corn in the husks in freezer. We also have some that we cut off the ends on and vacuum sealed. So we have corn put up 3 different ways, and it's definitely something that we really do enjoy. It's the best corn that I've ever had. I'm a butter lover, and this stuff doesn't need it. Okay, so back to my tomatoes. Here is the salsa. These are just tomatoes in their own juice, and I've got several quarts of those here. Then we have pizza sauce as well as spaghetti sauce. Down here, I have another whole set of tomatoes in their own juice. So lots of tomatoes, and tomatoes are such a base for so many things, and I couldn't commit to exactly what I wanted to do, that I just decided to put them in their own juice, and then I'll have the option to do whatever I want with them whenever I want to do it. So that's the way we're going to do it. Now, the other thing that I did, I dehydrated a whole bunch of tomatoes. I have these little jars all around. These are my cherry tomatoes. I love them. I really love them on my pizzas. If you've seen any of those recipes, I love to throw those freeze-dried tomatoes on my pizzas as well as in pasta. Now down here, like I mentioned before, these are all pickles. These are bread and butter. And then over here are the dills, a little cowboy candy in the middle, and just some of the favorites for my kiddos by far. On this shelf, I have potatoes, and I did grow potatoes and we ate all of them. And so I know next year I'm definitely going to grow more, and we've invested in some more space to be able to grow more for the following year. But right now I actually order my potatoes from Azure Standard, and I can get them in bulk. And then I just can up any of the extras as needed. Can I just tell you how easy mashed potatoes are to make from canned potatoes? And they're fabulous. So if that's something that you're interested in at all, it is so great to be able to just pull open a jar of potatoes and throw some up there on the top shelf, canned meat. I have pulled pork up there. And so to be able to pop open some potatoes and pulled pork and corn and even the broth that's coming off of that pork to make some gravy and have an instant meal put together in no time flat. It's faster than a drive-through, and it's way healthier. And I'm controlling the ingredients at home. And can I tell you about the price savings? It's absolutely insane. Now, down here, I have beans that I've canned for myself, which I mentioned before. I have black and pinto right here, as well as some more that are ready to go whenever I want to can them up. Some more quarts of pickles. And I'm never going to get to the point where we make everything. So I also keep some of these Annie Chun's brown rice pad thai noodles down here. If you have a gluten-free member of your house, these things are a fabulous substitute, and they are literally just brown rice flour and water. No other ingredients. They're delicious, and they're super easy to cook. I have a trick on that, so if you want to know that, definitely comment below, and I'll give you the trick to making them even better than the way the box says. Now, over here on the other side of the room is where I keep my bulk supplies as well as my dehydrator. And I will say that dehydrator has been an absolute surprise. I kept it unused for quite a while. We actually borrowed it from a friend to make sure that it was something we were interested in pursuing before we invested. And then they happened to be letting it go, and we were able to steal it at a great price. So keep your eyes out for equipment that's on your list on Facebook marketplaces, or ask friends or family that might have some of those things available if it's something that you're interested in. Now down here in the bottom, these are my buckets of all-purpose flour and bread flour. I do have a curtain coming to close that off. I'm actually keeping my empty boxes for my jars up there too. So that way when I need to move them around, I can easily do so by just putting them back in the flats. So this is my baking center, and always before I've had this KitchenAid stand mixer. Literally, this tells you guys about my life, y'all. I had this KitchenAid stand mixer since we got married 11 years ago, and I probably used it 6 times before the last 2 months. Like 6 times ever, and that might be a stretch. It might be more like 3. So if you're wondering what our lifestyle was like before I decided to step outside of traditional thinking and get back into a more traditional way of raising my family, the story of this mixer tells it all. But this is my new baking station. I mix all of my flour over here for our sourdough, which I completely love. And we also keep our blender in here to be able to make quick smoothies and those kinds of things to not take up counter space in the other room. So if you have any wondering about if anyone can decide to take their sustainability back into their own hands, regardless of their abilities or their interest in doing it before, the answer is 100% yes. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. One thing worth mentioning while we're here, if you're thinking about getting into canning this year or even starting a garden, go ahead and start putting a pack of quart and a pack of pint jars on your list at the grocery store every single month. And then when the summer comes and you have that abundance of product that you need to start putting away, you will already invested that money slowly, and you won't be making a big investment at any given time. this is a strategy that I feel like would have really, really helped us out. Another great strategy for jars is to ask your friends and family, because many people have jars sitting in their basements collecting dust, because canning isn't something that many people do anymore. And sometimes jars can be easily picked up at a deep discount. Now, there is one caveat here, which is that I've seen some people trying to resell them and make a lot of money on them. If you're paying more than 50 cents for a used jar, you should not do it. And the reason is that the lids that go on top are around 50 cents as well, which of course you can get some a little bit cheaper, but you want to make sure you're getting quality. And you can get a new pack of jars themselves with rings and lids for around $1 a jar. So it's really not a savings if somebody's trying to charge you more than 50 cents for the individual jar. So some of my friends have recently asked me what's next for us. And I'm actually right now in part of that vision and part of that plan in the process of coming true. I am sitting on the edge of a garden bed that we are purchasing from our neighbors along with their chicken coop. And I know we could have put in our own chicken coop. We're actually purchasing this land in an effort to put in solar panels. So this just happened to be part of it. But we're getting their garden space along with their chicken coop. And we'll be starting our own chicken flock in the spring, which the kids are insanely excited about. So chicken lovers out there, send me the details on your favorite breed, because I know many of you have very strong feelings on which ones are best. And considering that we have a family full of little kiddos, we need them to be easy to handle and perfect for the Missouri weather. One of my favorite YouTube channels to watch is Roots and Refuge. And one thing that Jess often says is that you should turn your waiting room into a classroom. And that is my plan over the next year. As we continue to expand here, I still have things, of course, that I want to do that are not going to be achievable over that time. And one of the next skills that I want to learn is working with raw dairy. So if you want to follow me along on any of those adventures, as well as more tips with gardening as spring comes in, definitely make sure to subscribe to this page so I can show you more about what's going on around our house and hope to inspire you a little bit more along the way. May this be a seed planted in fertile ground to help inspire you to join me in unplugging from the typical societal methods of procuring food and jumping back into more traditional management of the home. Until next time, friends, be well.